Is this thing on?
I am Queens.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa, and you are listening to the All Things Pelvic podcast, where you get to follow my life as a pelvic floor physical therapist. That may sound a little boring, but real quick, let me break it down. I bring up topics that most people find difficult to talk about, but maybe it's time we get comfortable with discussing the uncomfortable. I always strive for real talk, good vibes, and mostly all things pelvic. Join me and my guests as we discuss healthcare, culture, and real life topics. Are you ready? Because it's time to take a page out of my playbook. Hi everyone, we are back and it is officially very hot in New York City. Just a little update from me. That is what's happening right now. And today I'm super excited because we kind of have like a different guest on here. I feel like I've had like other pelvic floor PTs. You guys have definitely met like some of my friends. We have Callie on here today. Callie, can you introduce yourself? Tell us about what you do, the whole spiel.
Yeah, hey, so I am Callie Kreitcher. I live in Pennsylvania. I am a registered dietitian in the state. I have grown up suffering from interstitial cystitis. So my long-term goal has always been to work with other people with interstitial cystitis. And eventually, after passing my board exam to be a dietitian, I did the typical hospital thing. I worked in weight management, and there was a point this past year where I was like, okay, like I need to make some moves on this dream of mine. And I took the steps and created a business. It's called Callie K Nutrition. And my focus is only on people with IC. So we really just look at the basics with nutrition, and we look at the IC diet and how to apply that to your lifestyle.
Yeah, which I think is freaking amazing. I mean, I think so many people this past year too were just like, okay, well, now's the time. And I feel like I actually read an article the other day about how much that happened within this past year, which I think is honestly pretty dope. Like it's
Yeah.
great. Like I think it's such a cool thing. Now, you said like specifically with those who have IC, for people who don't know what interstitial cystitis is, can you give us a little bit of a rundown?
Yeah. So interstitial cystitis is a condition that, first of all, has no cause
Mm-hmm.
or no known cause. Sorry. Um, they're still working on developing theories for causes, but we really don't know. So, with me growing up with it, I have a feeling it's genetic. Maybe there was a UTI along the way that, triggered it, whatever. So, a lot of us don't know what caused our IC, but essentially, the theory is that our bladder lining is damaged, or the nerves are, all out of whack, and the symptoms are frequency, urgency, burning of the bladder or the urethra, pelvic pain, pressure in that area. Um, those are the typical symptoms. You don't have to have all of them.
Yep.
For me, I only have burning. I don't really suffer from the frequency that other people have, but it it also has no cure right now. So we don't know a cure. We really are just working on managing it. And diet is one of the major treatment methods for IC.
For sure. Now, my definition, my non medical definition of IC, and with all due respect to anybody that has it, hot mess. Like it is genuinely a hot mess. Like, and I feel, I really feel for my patients when I talk to them about what's going on, because it's unfortunate that it one takes a very long time to get diagnosed with it, because like you just said, you were like, I have burning, but it can
Yeah.
also be inclusive of all of these things, all of these other things. So that's where one gets hard to diagnose.
then another thing, on like you also just said, there is no known cause. So when everybody's trying to figure out, like, did I do this? Is it something that I have been, maybe that I've been doing like since I was younger that I'm just not sure about? And what I always say to my patients with that, and this is even other than IC, is like, we can't even think about that. We gotta work with what we have going on now and move on from there. Like, that's like ultimately, I think, what will help to, help your mental health, but then also just like help your symptoms as well. But it is, not to like add fuel to the fire here, but I do think it is one of those like diagnoses where it kind of, you Google it and there's like a rabbit hole of things that like you can see, and it just, it can be it can be intimidating. But I also think it's so awesome that like you kind of use that as fuel for yourself to start your own business and everything.
Yeah, and I truly did not know about the black hole of the internet and IC until about a year ago when I started thinking about all of this.
Yeah.
Like, I joined all of the support groups. A lot of them I've been kicked out of, but whatever. And
wait, okay, we gotta dial back to that after you're done. Yeah, okay, so you're part of support groups. Keep going.
And so a lot of people told me to check out Reddit. So there are Reddit threads on this, which can also be a hot mess. There's just like a lot of misinformation going around, or just, people saying something works for them and then other people thinking, oh, that's the thing that's going to work for me. But that's usually not the case, because everybody is so different. And I tell all of my clients that their IC is like a puzzle, and they need to solve that puzzle. And in order to solve it, you might need a little bit of PT, and you need to, switch up your diet a little bit. You might need some medications, but everybody has a little puzzle that they have to solve, and there's not a one size fits all approach to IC.
For sure. That for anybody, for anyone, there's not one size fits all for anything in life, I feel like. All right, we got to dial back for a second. So, why were you kicked out of these support groups? I mean, I already love it because you probably said something. That obviously people did not want to hear, but I'm assuming you were probably correct in what you said, but go ahead.
No, like, there was no explanation. I just got kicked out, and that was it. Like, I can't even like search the group anymore. And it's one of the biggest Facebook support groups. I don't remember what the name of it specifically is. But yeah, I was really, really upset about that, because there's like 10,000 people in it that I could be helping. And, they just kicked out the only IC dietitian.
Which is weird. You would think that you would want somebody like that in there. That's exactly. Very interesting. So, did you comment on something, or did you like post something?
No, my posts were fine. I think it was a comment that really set them off, but I ended up just making my own Facebook group.
Yeah. Good. No, great. Yeah. I mean, because now you can just help people on your own. Yeah. And I've seen this happen in plenty of even just like other support groups and stuff too, where a provider will then like state their opinion about something, and unfortunately it's sometimes what people do not want to hear, and then you get kicked out. So that hasn't happened to me, but the reason why it hasn't is because on Facebook I tend to just look. I'm not really like a commenter. Yeah, like that hasn't happened because of that. Because there have been plenty of things where I think I could have commented, and like I probably would have been.
I'm a big commenter.
Yeah, no, but listen, like and that's good. That's a good thing. But then again, that goes into kind of like the rabbit hole stuff, right? So now somebody who could have been very, very helpful is now kicked out of the group. So what those people have to rely on are possibly other people then just stating like, oh, this is what happened to me. This is probably what will happen to you, instead of then listening to the provider. Yeah. All right. Okay.
So disappointing, but have my own group now, so
For
I'm in charge of that one.
And honestly, that stuff happens. Like it happens, and it's ridiculous. I think that's one of the like worst parts of social media. Like social media is such a beautiful thing. It really is, but that is one of the things that like kind of makes it bad.
Right.
But on the up hand, like you just said, you have your own group now. Now, I definitely was like thinking about different questions. I mean, like I get questions about diet all the time. Just like in my sessions with my patients, and what I always say, well, now I use your name. I like you were
Thank
on
you.
of course you were on my resource list like officially. But I also do know my realm, and I go, guys, for the most part, like what I do know is like, of course, anything that's like anti-inflammatory, like in general, that's good for people, to be having. So that's usually just like my go-to suggestion with that. But then I'm like, look, you gotta talk to, like a dietitian, a nutritionist, whoever is good with that. So I usually kind of refer then to other
Okay.
people. But what are like some myths that you have found with like either certain diets that you've heard for IC? Like, is there anything that you can kind of think of or like that comes to mind with that?
Yes, I do want to back up 1 second
Yeah.
and mention that. So, as a dietitian, we go through school and we do not learn about IC. We do not learn about anything outside of your typical obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, things like that.
Yeah.
So that that makes it extremely difficult for somebody with IC to be referred to a dietitian who most likely has no idea what IC is. So that's why there's a huge need for more people like myself, who is a dietitian who specializes in IC, because I know a lot of people who have come to me saying, like, I tried to see a dietitian in the past, and honestly, they were just asking me questions the whole time, and I just got frustrated.
Yeah.
So I think that is a big thing, just to be aware of. Like, if you do refer people out, they might end up running into that scenario, and sometimes it's like the opposite of helpful.
1000%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just I'll let you continue in a second, but I think about that sometimes, where it's like, if you start to question your patients so much about like what they're going through, it's like, how are they supposed to now like trust you with like what you're
Right.
about to do with their diagnosis, like that's not right. It's so I
Exactly.
get that.
And IC is a condition where like you need to know what you're talking about in order to help people. So,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that more people like me are able to, come into this field eventually. I know of one other dietitian doing it, Julie Beyer, and she is retiring. So there is a big
Wow.
need. Yeah. But yeah, so I can tell you about a whole lot of different myths about, diets that people talk about. So I see a lot in these Facebook support groups about, you know, decreasing your oxalates, decreasing your histamine intake, going gluten-free, going
Yeah.
dairy-free. Like, you name it, I've seen it. I have seen you need to follow a carnivore diet. And then I go,
Your face right now is so funny because like
okay, this face isn't that bad. If you say keto to me, I'm gonna like fall on the floor.
Yeah. Well,
So-
those are the first things that came to my mind is
Yeah.
when anybody says anything about like, oh my gosh, should I go gluten free? Should I do keto? Should I do all these like different things? I am definitely somebody that just believes in like everything in moderation, and that is just my general opinion on stuff. Of course, if you have a gluten allergy, you probably should go gluten free. Like of course, of course.
Right.
But yeah, I now think about your realm though. It's the same thing as somebody saying to me that like pelvic floor PT is just Kegels. Right? Huge myth, huge myth, right? So
Right.
I think about on your end, like you are not just going to take somebody through like a keto diet, okay.
No.
And
No,
keep
and
going.
a lot of this comes from my weight management background. So my feelings about keto and any sort of restrictive diet kind of stems from that realm. And that's another reason I wanted to get out of like the weight management area, because I don't believe in restriction. So that's kind of why I am here now. I'm out of that area, and I'm trying to help people with IC understand that they don't need to restrict themselves until they have a reason to. So what I mean by that is we have this diet that was created over 10 years ago that came after a study of surveys were sent to over 300 people. They got about 100 surveys back. They found out what those 100 people were sensitive to in terms of foods and beverages, and that's how they created the IC diet. So really, we're just going off of anecdotal evidence of what these people thought they were sensitive to, which they most likely are sensitive to. It's just a very, very difficult thing to study. Like, you can't study the IC diet by itself because there are so many other variables like stress or your pelvic floor or, a whole lot of different things that could be in play. So that's why we can't study the diet in its own lane. So most people with IC do not need to avoid everything on that list.
Right.
And the diet has kind of, it started out like the people who made it were trying to be helpful, but over the years it has been like evolving into like this big scary monster, because everybody looks at this diet, or they get handed a piece of paper that says don't eat this, this, and this from their urologist. They go home and they don't eat that for 5 years. And it's like, what?
Yeah. And then it's also kind of just like, okay, well, is it helping? Because that is something that I see a lot too, where then people will be like, yep, like I haven't been eating tomatoes, or like something acidic, whatever it is that might cause more irritation and that are known for causing more irritation to the bladder. But then my first question always to them is, well, did it help? And a lot of them are just like, well, no. And I'm like, see, this is where, and then that is where the cycle then continues, right?
Yes, exactly. So, they eliminate all these foods, but then, maybe they slip up here and there, and they don't really know, and it's not their fault at all. Yeah. They don't really know how to identify their triggers, because every single person is different, and their bladder can tolerate different things than other people. Right. So how are you going to know what your unique triggers are without testing that? Right. So what I do and what I recommend to people is to conduct an elimination diet. Mm-hmm. So are you familiar with that?
I am very familiar with it, but you can definitely give a rundown for anybody that might not be. Yes.
Yes. So an elimination diet is basically where you eliminate all potential triggers, and then you add them back in one by one to test them. Now, there are a lot of things that I see go wrong when people try to do elimination diets on their own. Mm-hmm. So first of all, you need to break the elimination diet into 3 phases. So you need to start with a baseline phase that lasts maybe 1 to 2 weeks, where you're obtaining all of this data. So let's say you're tracking what you're eating, how you're cooking it, how much you're urinating, how often you're going. So I mean, like, pee in a cup, measure it, like, for a full week. Mm-hmm. And track your symptoms, track your menstrual cycle if you need to, whatever. So that's our baseline data that we can compare to at the end to see if we have had success or if we haven't. So in phase 2, which will last anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, that is when you take out all potentially bothersome foods. So what I have my clients do is only eat off of the bladder-friendly column of the IC diet. So you know how the IC diet has 3 columns typically. So you would only be eating off of the green column or the bladder-friendly one. And in this phase, most people experience some extent of relief. So, if your pain levels are at a 7 and they go down to a 5, that's a win.
Right.
Okay. And this phase can get really restrictive, but that's why we only do it for 2 to 4 weeks.
Right.
And a big problem that I see with a lot of people suffering from IC is that they get stuck in the elimination phase for years and they don't know it because they're terrified to add in a food that is on the caution list or the try it list. Like, they're so scared to cause a flare.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually love what you said just now about like going from a 7 to a 5. Like, that's a huge win. Like, I'm very big on like objective things with my patients too. Like, I always say like a 6 to a 5 is something. Like, it is something. And like, that is what we have to work with. So I actually love that you just said that. But as intense as the elimination diet is, it also is very important because like if there's a certain food that, let's say, is on like a you can't have it list, like one of those things, but it doesn't give you a flare up, then like that's an okay food for you, and you don't have to cut those things out. And like that's why I think that because I've done one. I've totally done one. And like as hard as it is, it really does give you a lot of information and honestly really helps with your mental health too. Like it gives you more of a peace of mind. So I love that you do that. And I think that it's really important.
Yeah.
Now, do you find though that with your clients and stuff, is there a lot of, how do I say this? Like, just like a lot of frustration, like a lot of frustration where, because like my experience with my patients who have IC, it's a lot of like, oh my gosh, my doctor just gave me this list of things not to eat and like I don't know what to do now, or said that like this is what I should be doing in PT. Like for us, like I get so many people referred where they say like my doctor told me to do Kegels, and I'm like, actually that's like probably not what you should be doing. Like my typical patients with IC tend to have a tighter pelvic floor, and like we can't keep strengthening something that's already insanely tight. Like we can't do that. So I always then explain that to them and they 1000% understand. But I feel like there's all this misinformation out there about this diagnosis for sure.
Yeah, so much. And I get so frustrated when I hear that people are just either they don't even talk about the diet when they're diagnosed, or they just get a piece of paper and they're left to learn it on their own.
Yeah.
It's like there's no in between there.
Right.
And that's so frustrating. And that's what I'm trying to, bridge the gap with.
Yeah, which I think is amazing. Now, you said that there's only like one other person like you out there that
I know.
That you know of.
That I know of.
That is specifically working with clients who have IC.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just talking with Jill Osborne the other night. She's the head of the IC network.
Amazing.
And she was like so thrilled to hear from me. She's like, oh my God, I'm so happy because, Julie's leaving and we really, really, really need some help with nutrition as a community.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm so excited to like help with that and like get into whatever the heck I need to get into. Yeah. But I don't want to get sidetracked because I didn't talk about phase 3 and I don't want to forget.
Yes. Go for it.
Okay. So the important part of this is that in phase 3, we're testing foods, beverages, and supplements one at a time over the course of 3 days each. So on day 1, you would try a small amount of whatever it is. So let's say you want to try coffee. So the first day you would do a sip of coffee. If you're good to go, the next day you would do, let's say, a half a cup of coffee. Okay. And if you have no symptoms, the third day you do a regular portion size, which maybe that's a regular sized cup of coffee. And if you are okay and you have no symptoms, then you add coffee to your personal bladder friendly list. So I encourage people to make their own personalized list. And if at any point during that testing period they have symptoms, they need to record that and remove the food or beverage from, their diet, and then take a few days off and then move on to the next food. So by increasing the amount we're eating or drinking, it helps to tell you how much your body can tolerate. So if you can have a little bit of coffee, that's a win.
Yeah, no,
Right?
for real though. Yeah, that's a huge win. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I love, 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 love coffee. I like force myself to just have one cup because I genuinely enjoy the flavor. But
Yeah.
seriously though, like that is huge. Like, or if somebody, let's say, like likes something a little bit more acidic, like orange juice or, like whatever it is, like great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So, I mean, just from my personal experience doing an elimination diet, I know that I'm able to I actually have a latte every day. So I have 2 shots of espresso every morning. I'm fine with that. I can have small amounts of tomato sauce. I can do small amounts of citrus.
Right.
Chocolate's usually a killer. Alcohol, not good for me. But, every once in a while, if I go out with friends and I have a shot of tequila, I'm okay. Like,
okay, right up my alley. Love.
small amounts I'm okay with. But, that's part of figuring it out, because you don't want to live the rest of your life just restricting so many foods and being scared to eat and being scared to go to a restaurant. Like, that's really what we're trying to avoid
For sure.
by doing this.
And I think that's one of the most important things to take out of today's episode too, because one thing, so you just said something that I think is very, very important, to like not be so restrictive. And now again, the food portion is not my realm fully, but I do, of course I need to ask, like, okay, like you had a flare up, like what happened here, right? So a lot of times, some, like one of my patients will say, like, I did have alcohol this weekend, and I'm like, okay, all right, then I was like, well, we already know, like, this is a big one. So what I always try to say to them as well is like, listen, like, it is okay to go out and like have a margarita with your friend. However, if you do know that it is going to be a trigger and that it is going to cause a flare up, then you got to just know that, right? Like, you have to kind of know your limits and then go from there. But that also doesn't mean that you need to like completely leave it out. I think sometimes also just knowing, like, okay, this, is probably going to cause a little something for me. Great. Let me like have another glass of water after I had that margarita. Anything to calm down your bladder. Awesome.
Right.
That's the same thing. Like, I am very much so the practitioner that like, I will not tell somebody, like, biking is known as not being good for the pelvic floor. Same thing with running. Yeah.
Funny.
Same
That's
thing
so
with
funny.
running, right? It's known, but I always, when my patients come in and like, they're like, am I really like never gonna bike again? I'm like, oh my God, get out of here. I was like, cause I am that one that would be like, I want to teach you how to do this so that you don't have a flare up off of it. Okay. Like, and like, that's how we roll with that, because if anybody ever told me not to dance again, not to like do certain things that like I personally love to do, like, I would go crazy. Like, I genuinely would go crazy. So the fact that it is being said, I can't even tell you how many times like that has been said to patients where it's just like, nope, you need to like not like, you need to not do this, you need to not do that. So I really like that you are big on like not restricting things.
And as humans, like, we always want what we can't have. So if somebody tells us this anymore, then that's all you're going to think about, and you're going to just have a pity party about it, when in fact you most likely can do it. So that's the thing. And a lot of people with IC struggle with intimacy, and they have this idea in their head that they're never going to be able to do anything sexual ever again, and that's most likely not the case. But that's why it can mentally be so harmful. And I know I went through a period like that. It just really takes a toll on you physically and mentally.
1000%. Yeah. And for sure, I mean, that's like where pelvic floor PTs come in, of course, with like the intimacy portion and stuff too. And even just like trying to be intimate. You know, like it's a very like scary thing because you don't want to hurt yourself. A lot of times then your partner is also like, "Oh my gosh, am I going to hurt you?" It's like it's all these like things that you kind of have to like go back and forth with. But yeah, it's like it is very inclusive of all these things, but that also makes me very grateful that there are more people like you out there, which is why I'm very happy that we connected. And I'm really excited for your opportunity too with like the founder of the IC. Yeah, so amazing. I think that, first of all, awesome. Like,
Thank you.
yeah, so amazing. And I think that's also where it's important that like you have this like niche, you know, like, yes, like you are a dietitian, but like for this, like you come to me for this. And I think that's such a cool thing. And I love it. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I love it so far. I mean, I really tell everybody I'm just trying to be the person that teenage me needed when I was going through this stuff.
And honestly, hon, that's like usually the case. You know, like that's definitely usually the case. I oddly enough didn't know like I needed pelvic floor PT until I became one. Like, you know, like it was like a very, very weird thing. But yeah, it sometimes takes like certain experiences for us to be like, this is now what I want to help with. But I also think that that's kind of the beauty in that, is that you went through something and now you can help somebody else. And I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, it's so exciting, and I really can't wait to connect with so many other people. And like I could literally talk to you about this all day long.
I know, I was just gonna say.
I have so many things swirling around my head right now.
Yeah.
But I'll keep it chill.
You are good. You are good. With that being said, where can my listeners find you and my followers and everybody?
Yes.
So yeah, give us a rundown of where we can, contact you.
Yes. So the biggest platform that I'm on the most is Instagram. So they can find me at CallieKNutrition.com. So it's CALLIEK nutrition.com. No, not .com. Sorry. It's an Instagram. That's my website. Okay. It's literally just Callie K Nutrition. I'm so sorry. But yeah, I do a lot of like really fun reels make fun of providers and like the IC experience. I don't know if you saw the one that I did about using a dilator.
Oh my God, no, I didn't, but I will need to because I want to make a reel about that. Yeah.
Super cringe, but like literally, like I keep all of these like in my drawer.
She just whipped out a bunch of dilators and pelvic ones. I love that.
The one day I was like, okay, I gotta make fun of this. So you have to check that one out. It's really cringy, amazing. But it's funny. It had a lot of views. And then my website is CallieKNutrition.com. And then I moderate a Facebook group that's called Interstitial Cystitis Nutrition Support Group. It's a mouthful. And that's the one that I created so that I can post whatever I want.
Amazing. So amazing. I love it. And I will also be posting that, so I'll be posting Callie's information so that everybody can get in contact with her.
Yay.
I literally can talk to you all day. I know. Genuinely think so. But thank you for being on here.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course.
Thank you guys so much for listening to the All Things Pelvic Pod. Have questions, concerns, comments? Want to share your story? Remember to follow me on Instagram at @the_pelvic floor playbook. DM me, share my stuff, like it, and let me know what you think. As a reminder, this is not medical advice by any means, so don't be out here doing a bunch of nonsense in these streets. If you need me and want a vibe, you know where to find me. I'm out.